and the heart-squeezing grief that had caused her to cling on to her ex, Theo, as the service had ended. Only the cold bite of the water around her ankles stopped her from bursting into tears again now. A wave splashed her legs, spattering her skirt with droplets. She felt ridiculous paddling in a suit, but she hadn't been thinking straight when she'd grabbed it from the hanger first thing that morning. She'd had an early meeting with the solicitors in Oxford before heading straight to Cornwall, and apart from her dad's funeral and today, it had stayed in the wardrobe. She'd no need for formal clothes in her job as a freelance illustrator, preferring jeans or a comfy jersey dress and well-worn plimsolls. Never mind. She could change as soon as she reached Maxie's. When her old school friend had heard Emma needed somewhere to live for the summer, she'd very kindly invited her to stay at her home outside Fulford. Emma had just landed a dream commission, the illustrations for a gorgeous book about the coast for a high-end publisher. They wanted a series of drawings and paintings to accompany the text, and when her agent had secured her the job just a few days before, she'd jumped at the chance. It was the one bright spot after a very dark few months. However, the project came with a very tight deadline, and she decided she needed to focus on it for the next few months away from the city. Sadly, her father's funeral had also sounded the death knell for her relationship with Theo. Oh, he'd been kind enough, offering tissues and making soothing noises, but on the way home from the wake, it had become clear that he expected her grief to be a temporary blip. He'd told her he couldn't understand why she was quite so upset, given she'd hardly seen her father over the years. She'd found it impossible to explain, then realised she shouldn't have to explain. Theo should surely have understood. The alarm bells might have rung then, but it was a week later that the axe had fallen. He'd phoned her from a business trip. He couldn't even face her in person, to say he'd accepted a new job in Dublin and was leaving. "I was going to tell you, but I kept putting it off, and then your dad passed away and it didn't seem right," he'd said hastily, clearly desperate to get off the line. "I'm so sorry, but I can't miss this opportunity. It's head of marketing, and I might never get the chance again. Obviously, I can't possibly expect you to move to another country." Well, obviously, Emma had thought. In other words, he didn't want her to move with him. Emma didn't want to uproot her life either, but it still hurt not to even be asked. The killer blow was when Theo had added, "Your heart wasn't really in our relationship anyway, was it?" "What do you mean?" Emma had said. "I never felt you thinking of us as long-term. Be honest, Emma. Neither of us could see us sitting by the fire with a brood of grandkids on our golden wedding anniversary. You always seem to be somewhere else." She'd cut off the call, too choked with shock to try to express how hurt she was. She hadn't heard from him after that, and she didn't expect to. But his words had harried her ever since. Your heart wasn't really in our relationship. Did he mean just her and Theo? Or any relationship? The chill of the water around her calves had begun to bite. That was it. She was getting out before the blood supply to her feet was cut off. She was also worried by the audience she'd attracted. The beach cleaners were gathered in a huddle nearby. They seemed to be looking at something in the tangle of weed and rubbish on the tide line. God knows what. Or why. Oh, God. One of her shoes slipped from her hand into the surf. No! It bobbed a few feet away, but amazingly was still afloat. Gritting her teeth against the cold, Emma waded towards it. The water was around her thighs now, and absolutely freezing, yet still the shoe bobbed agonizingly just out of reach. She took another step before a wave picked it up and swept it a few yards further out. Another wave broke just ahead of her, spattering her with chilly droplets. Ow! She threw her other shoe up the beach out of reach of the surf.